Welcome to the Joy Reid Show. When Donald Trump returned to the White House, having beat back multiple federal charges after being convicted of felonies in the state of New York, his first official act was to pardon nearly 1,600 insurrectionists, including violent convicted felons who beat, tased, and bear sprayed responding police officers on January 6th, leaving 5 of them dead following their injuries, including Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who suffered 2 strokes hours after being bear sprayed by Trump fanatics, as well as 4 officers who served at the Capitol who died from suicide. That's on top of the 4 Trump supporters who died that day or soon thereafter of heart attacks, 1 drug overdose, and 1 who was shot trying to breach the Speaker's Lounge with other MAGA fanatics. The message Trump clearly intended to send was that violence in his name was not just acceptable, it's patriotic and a symbol of national devotion, which to Donald Trump is the same as personal devotion to him. Since then, Trump has encouraged more mayhem, or at least looked the other way, as violent ICE arrests play out on camera across the country, with masked men tackling brown people seemingly everywhere, in front of stores and restaurants, at Home Depot, and even as they leave immigration court, seemingly based solely on the color of their skin. Recall that Trump called immigrants scum and claimed that they are poisoning the blood of our country. And in a New York Times piece, aides note that Trump joked about his chief henchman on immigration, Stephen Miller, that if he had his way, this country would have no more than 100 million rather than 350 million people living here, and they would all look like Stephen Miller. A frightening thought indeed. But given the clear racism, ethno-nationalism, and violent themes of this regime, it should come as no surprise that we have seen a rise in vigilante violence with racist intent. Right-wing fears of replacement, demonization of immigrants, and America's already violent gun culture are a toxic mix. And those ideas have become completely normalized, not just on the right, but inside of the Republican Party. As a candidate, Trump bragged that he did, quote, nothing on guns during his first term. And he continued to align himself with the gun lobby and its chief arm, the NRA. And as president again, he has taken actions that will surely make our violent and volatile political situation worse. In just his first 6 months as president again, Trump and his on-again, off-again ally Elon Musk, their made-up Doge agency, has slashed staffing at the Bureau of Tobacco, Alcohol, and Firearms. They've cut the number of gun dealer inspectors nationwide and effectively legalized machine guns by agreeing to a settlement in May that will force the Justice Department to not enforce the machine gun ban against any device that functions like a forced reset trigger. The regime even removed a memorial at ATF headquarters that was designed to remind employees of the human toll of gun violence. They also canceled $1 billion in mental health resources for schools, which have become almost routine targets for mass shooters in America. And then last month came the assassination of the former Speaker of the Minnesota House, who was shot to death alongside her husband by a Christian nationalist carrying a 9mm handgun and posing as a police officer as he went from house to house, injuring a second Democratic lawmaker and his wife, and carrying in his fake police car a hit list of 45 Democratic elected officials, abortion providers, and other targets. 4 years before that, authorities in California narrowly avoided a similar fate as a conservative auto repair shop owner named Ian Rogers, who'd amassed an arsenal of some 50 firearms and 15,000 rounds of ammunition, hatched a plot to attack the Democratic Party's California headquarters.
So we did find the weapons that you told me about, which I appreciate again. And I know that we've kind of gathered, and you told me that you're kind of a firearms enthusiast, like a lot of us are. When did you start converting the rifles to full auto? Or how do you do it, I guess?
I've had that Kalashnikov for many years.
Okay.
Probably converted maybe 2010.
Okay.
And then I built the other ones myself.
Okay. I know there's an M16 in there. Is that one of the full auto ones?
Yeah, I built that whole gun.
Okay. And so,
I'm a mechanic, so.
obviously, yeah, you're good with your hands. You're good with tools.
According to Michael Spies of The Trace, who conducted an in-depth investigation in partnership with Rolling Stone, Rogers' sister remembers him as not especially political until his lurch into a chillingly common brand of extremism that echoes messaging from the gun industry and the NRA.
How do you feel about things, the way that things are going in the country right now?
I'm scared. You know, Democrats taking control. Now they got the Senate. I'm worried for my children. I really am.
Mm-hmm.
How so?
Because it seems like the country's going communist. You know, the president of the United States can be censored. You know, what comes next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like the media is doing a lot of that.
If anybody should be guilty of inciting a riot, I think they are.
Yeah.
I feel like that. I mean, especially the way they've treated previous riots, you know?
Yeah, it's
They show what they want.
yeah, I mean, it's like they said that Trump he encouraged his supporters to be to riot. But if you look at the timeline, it's like he was giving a speech at 12:53 p.m. and that's when that's when Congress was ransacked, and he finished giving a speech at 1:10 p.m. So how did he incite a riot if he's still speaking and the Capitol's being under siege, right? I mean, it was obviously staged, I think.
Yeah.
There was probably some Trump supporters, but I think there was a lot of undercover, like NAFTA people. That's what I think.
Antifa? Is it?
Yeah. Like,
Okay.
NAFTA, Antifa. However you say it.
Yeah.
It just, to me, it's just, and then they just say, this is horrible. He incited a riot, over and over again. You tell a lie 1,000 times, people believe it. So,
Mm-hmm.
Perception is reality. So if they just show the rioting going on over and over and over again, then people are going to believe that scenario. So
Rogers himself is now confined to a federal prison cell and sees himself as a victim of political persecution, in the mold of the Trump supporters who stormed the U.S. Capitol during the January 6th attacks. And who benefits most from all of this toxicity? You guessed it, the gun lobby, whose sole purpose is to sell more and more guns, and even more lethal guns, regardless of the consequences.
Mostly for me, my guns are just for fun, and it's a really cool sport, and I like machines. Guns are cool machines. They're beautiful.
And Michael Spies joins me now. Michael, thanks so much for being here. Tell me about Ian Rogers and this plot that he planned in California.
So in late 2020, early 2021, Ian Rogers, then 44, was living in Northern California, and he and his best friend basically over text message hatched out a series of plans to attack democratic institutions, with pipe bombs, a variety, or I should say even an arsenal of firearms, with the hope more or less of igniting a civil war and ensuring that Joe Biden, who then obviously won the election, could not take office.
Have y'all been talking anything about the recent events that happened on the 6th?
Yeah. All the chaos, all the censorship,
Yes.
all
There's
the
a lot.
violations of the First Amendment.
Yeah. What did y'all talk about exactly? Just the First Amendment stuff and
Yeah, the President of the United States just got censored. I mean, it's kind of shocking. And nobody's really talking about it,
Yeah.
I think what they're doing is totally illegal. I know they're privately owned companies, but when your business model is to allow people to speak and then you censor certain individuals, I just think that's kind of garbage.
Yeah.
I think if that went to the Supreme Court, I think you'd agree with me. But
Yeah.
And so this it does ring similar to the January 6th conspirators, right? Who were prepared to use violence to make sure that Donald Trump became president again. In your reporting, are these sort of violent tendencies tied to a love of Trump? Is this part of the MAGA cult, or is it something bigger than that?
I think it's something bigger than that. Certainly didn't happen in a vacuum, and I think MAGA and Trump really are outgrowths of long-running right-wing conspiracies that have been embedded in the Republican Party for many years, and one of the chief purveyors of those conspiracies and that way of thinking very much was the gun rights movement and gun rights support groups like the National Rifle Association, um, which have been largely responsible for indoctrinating a relatively small but very militant group of white male Americans in order to keep them in the the gun buying market. I don't know what else to call it, but they sort of, I think the thinking for many years was maybe there won't be any real consequences by telling people that a tyrannical government's going to come and take away their rights and take away their guns, and that wasn't true. And Ian Rogers is really not an anomaly, as we're seeing.
So does this, I mean, I think back to Waco, right? Obviously, this was an attempt by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which literally the current Trump regime has had them take down the mural that was there to remind ATF employees of the horrors of gun violence. They're that sort of radical in terms of just the ideology. But you go back to Waco, that was an attempt by the ATF to enforce gun laws, right? That you can't have stockpile of machine guns. We've now seen that progress to Oklahoma City, progress to the current iteration of the right, where there's a constant belief that you have to keep electing Republicans or, the black helicopters are going to come and take your guns. Do you see all of these extremist movements as connected?
Yeah, I think they are all connected. And I think that, it's not said enough that the Republican Party, its candidates for elected office and the lawmakers themselves have gone out of their way for decades to exploit this mindset and put these people to use for votes. And then sort of like the thinking, I think, is that once an election is over, you can kind of move these people off stage and just let them wait in the wings until the next election comes around, at which point it will be time to whip up paranoia and hysteria again, which was like, perhaps most pronounced when Barack Obama was running for office. And then again, arming them to the teeth and somehow thinking that there will be no consequences, which has obviously just been wrong. I mean, Waco, you're bringing up, it's true. I mean, that was the ATF certainly could have done and the FBI, they were part of that too, certainly could have done a better job. And it's remembered now as like an example of government overreach. And, there's some truth to that. I mean, I think like as the famous hostage negotiator talked about, there was an issue about the FBI becoming overly reliant on arms and less reliant on again, hostage negotiation, that sort of thing. But it seems to have been completely forgotten that the Branch Davidian compound was filled to the teeth with an army's worth of firearms, and that David Koresh was also a cult leader who was carrying out all kinds of unlawful acts within this compound, and believed, like many people who you could say are cut from the same cloth, that it was basically up to him to save the world and his people, and firearms were a major part of that idea.
A lot of these guys think that martial law is going to be declared.
Okay.
And if that happens, what do we do? But it's just, come on.
Yeah.
It's like a mental exercise for some.
Well, there's nothing wrong with, on January 6th, what was going to happen that day, And a lot of people thought that Pence would do the reject the electors, right? But that, he did what he could, and that was it. That was constitutional in what he did. So for what these guys thinking that some miracle was going to happen. It's like, come on. I knew exactly what was going to happen because I follow history, you know.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're maybe more grounded than some of them.
No, these guys are all good people. It's just,
Yeah.
I'm a realist.
Right. That's what I mean by that. Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, you know, how could Pence reject the electors like that? It's never been done before, you know.
How does the NRA take advantage of things like great replacement theory, white replacement theory, I guess you could call it, because that really has become normalized inside of the Republican Party. It's sort of normal dogma now is that they have to rid the country of non-white immigrants because there's a plot by Jewish conspirators to replace white Christians with brown and black people so that Democrats can win elections. That's a now pretty commonplace belief among Republican voters, and it's spoken by elected officials. How does the NRA take advantage of that? Because we're now seeing, you know, masked men kidnapping non-white people off the streets, and folks are not even sure all of those people are cops or ICE.
Totally. Which is, again, also funny. I mean, not funny, but like this is supposed to be the thing that the gun rights movement existed to stand as a buffer against, right? Their whole claim was that a tyrannical government was going to impose martial law and take everyone's rights away. I mean, the famously Wayne LaPierre, the NRA, referred to them as jackbooted thugs, but obviously they don't care that it's happening right now because it's not happening to them. So obviously that rings hollow. But to your question, I would say the NRA was actually at the vanguard of replacement theory. I don't know that they were even calling it that at the time, but all of their propaganda going back to the 90s revolved around them telling their members that there is a plot to not just take away your rights, but to wipe away your identity. That the country that you know and love that belongs to you is being ripped away by communists, Marxists, immigrants, definitely later Muslims. It is in every way meets the definition of selling a notion of replacement. You know, that they're going to be basically wiped out of existence if they don't stand and fight for their tribe, and that's, you know, what it is. It's rank tribalism in a very explicit way. I mean, it's not, if you've ever been to an NRA annual meeting that happens every year, it's a confab where, like, you know, between 75 and 90,000 members show up. I mean, it is not just one of the whitest events that you could imagine, having been to them, but it's also almost entirely male.
And then you got China on the rise, you know. They're like the Japanese back in the 1930s, as far as I'm concerned. So they're going to be a problem. So America's definitely on decline. But where do you go? You know, like, I like my Second Amendment, so
Yeah.
I have the option. Because my wife's Ukrainian, I could move to the Ukraine or Russia. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but then, you know, I don't want to give up my Second Amendment. You know,
It's a, you know, as I was saying in the story, right? White men comprise about 30% of the United States population. So obviously significant, not a majority, right? But according to the gun industry's own records, white men comprise the vast majority of gun buyers year in and year out, like around 60%. And that's more than twice their population. While at the same time, we have to remember that it's only a slice of that 30% that is buying guns, since most white men don't own firearms. So you've just hyper radicalized this small group of men that feels, for various reasons, either displaced. They've been told repeatedly that, you know, the elites hate them, that, you know, Obama's a conspiracy against white men, that Democrats want them gone. You're creating the most combustible possible recipe, right? I mean, it's finally like the chickens are coming home to roost right now. That's how I see it.
And now we've got the Trump administration reaching this settlement that will essentially stop the Department of Justice from enforcing the ban on selling parts that can turn ordinary rifles into machine guns. You put that on top of the bump stock ruling in the Supreme Court. How concerned? I mean, you've done the journalism on this. We could now have a situation where what happened in Minnesota and what might have happened in California, and what's happening at schools all over the country could now be conducted with essentially machine guns.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's this, you're pointing out the exact right thing. And I think it just, it is terrifying. And I think that one of the reasons I wrote the story is because I want people to understand that who knows how many Ian Rogers there are walking around right now, right? Like when I was talking about earlier about what percentage of white men, comprise the overall gun market, that's the legal gun market, which is to say, like, just people may not have it, like, it's just all these people, there's so many men that may have a history of violence, are politically radicalized, share very similar characteristics to the man in Minnesota or to Ian, and you wouldn't know that just because they passed a background check.
Hey, Ian, were you planning on hurting anybody or anything like
I
that?
haven't thought about it.
Yeah. Like, tell me about that. Like, what do you mean?
I've thought about fighting back against the government.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it's always when I'm inebriated.
Yeah.
You wake up and you go, yeah, that's not a good idea.
Did you have any specific plans to do that?
Just, just thoughts, But then you think about it, what could you do? I don't want to hurt anybody, I mean, maybe if you could attack the right people, but you don't want to hurt an innocent person, Like people people that are really causing problems in this world, like George Soros, I mean, it's kind of satisfying thinking about hurting some scumbag like that. Just because, the guy causes so much chaos and misery. But
and are continuing, and the other important thing is a small percentage of the gun industry's profits come from first-time gun buyers. So what they're relying on is people who repeatedly buy guns. So once you're in the market, they need to keep you there. And in order for them to make money, the people who are bringing in revenue are the people that, are buying, between 10 and 40 firearms, right? And we've sort of become just like accepted this situation. But you have like this massive arms inbound society, and all of these men, where a lot of them have very common traits, which is like hyper conservative, frequently perhaps like, susceptible to conspiratorial thinking, willing to follow what they perceive to be orders from Donald Trump. I don't want to sound overly alarmist, but just like it doesn't, like, what is really keeping us safe from this? It doesn't really feel like anything.
Anybody else that you were thinking is a problem that you needed to in your mind, in your drunken fantasies, take care of?
Just thoughts about, taking the country back, living according to the Constitution again,
Mm-hmm.
That would be nice, But how does one guy do it? You know what I mean? It's a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Well, two things. On the one hand, you're also seeing a rise in purchasing. I mean, if the NRA is pushing this messaging to white men that you're under threat and you need to arm up and you need to have 30, 40, 50, guns stockpiled in your home, you're also seeing on the other side, are you not, an increase in people on the other side purchasing firearms. I read statistics that African Americans, Asian Americans, because of all of the massacres, multiple massacres taking place in Asian American communities, are starting to buy. Like, is the NRA sort of winning by losing? I mean, like, they were financially bankrupt a couple of years ago,
Right.
but it seems like the gun lobby's kind of winning, right? Because people on the other side are saying, well, if those right-wing white men have guns, we need guns. And so it seems that the gun lobby is kind of winning on all sides.
Well, I think even if the NRA disappeared tomorrow, it's like its success has already been sort of embedded in American society. You know what I mean? Like the issue of guns is totally binary, right? It's not like dissimilar, I would say, from abortion. It's just like, Republicans advocate for the least amount of no restrictions. That's generally like the Republican perspective, and Democrats obviously take the opposite perspective. So the idea that a party has basically absorbed the NRA's entire platform is definitely a success. I mean, it is true that during COVID, especially in 2020, there was an uptick in buying for all first-time buyers, but especially among minorities, and that includes Black men and Asians, and that seems to be legitimate. But also then at the same time, according to the industry's research, post-COVID, there was it sort of, if there was a surge, then it sort of receded, and the market sort of went back to the way it was, which is to say, dominated by white men and the first-time buyers who would come in this very unusual circumstance that kind of was just like an anomaly. But either way, yes, I mean, it just they went. If you put the idea that there's your enemies or people who want to hurt you are super armed, it definitely seems like it can trigger people to buy guns, and that all in all seems to benefit that organization and the industry itself. And the question is, like, where does it end? Like, at what point will we ever decide that, like, this is a completely intolerable, unsustainable situation, and we're gonna, like, it's not, what will be the event that will finally convince people that we've created like a society that is not really anything that resembles like a contemporary democracy that is the richest country in the history of the world?
It's hard to see because there are similar mental health issues, conspiracy theories all over the world. People, have the same characteristics, but they don't have massacres like we do. I want to ask you about the United States military. And I don't know if this is something that you've gone into in your reporting, but you are seeing that Pete Hegseth, as head of the Defense Department, has ended recruiting at things like African American high tech organizations, or organizations that encourage Black folks to get into the technological industries or to get into high tech industries. They've stopped recruiting women. They've stopped recruiting gays, but they're really recruiting heavily at NRA events like the ones that you described. What does that mean for our future? Because it seems that Pete Hegseth is trying to absorb the NRA's ethos into the United States military.
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, because I think that I my perception from the outside, one, is that seems like a really accurate observation. But two, going back to something we were talking about earlier, at the current moment, we have masked men who may or may not be agents of the United States ripping people off the streets. They just happen to not be white men. And this is like the sort of right-wing nightmare that they've been warning about for forever, but they don't care about this. And my feeling, though this was, for what it's worth, I'm not surprised by that. I never thought that this was like the true concern.
How'd you start getting into like all this stuff, all the firearms and stuff like
I've just
that?
always been a gun nut.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I saw you were wearing in one of the pictures at the shop, you had a Marine shirt on. You have any ties with the Marines?
No, I like the military. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I was a big military buff too, so I can definitely appreciate that. Was your dad in the military or something?
He was in the Navy.
Navy, right on.
I was in the Navy.
Oh, cool.
I think that, and this is what is the scariest thing to me of all. I think that those men that are civilian gun owners but identify with the military, and that's why they buy AR-15s and similar weapons and buy like that kind of military gear, is that they've always seen themselves as almost an extension of the United States, the right-wing military, right? And they see themselves as like a paramilitary or like a civilian police force. You know what I mean? But it's only directed at I mean, this is sort of what fascism is, right? It's only directed at people who don't agree with them or frankly, are just like Democrats.
Military stuff's cool because you get really high quality for cheap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you bought that stuff brand new, it would be extremely expensive. But if you buy military surplus, it's cheap.
Yeah, it is.
And so it's not surprising to me at all that Hegseth would recruit from that pool, because like those people have already been thoroughly socialized into the idea that they are, in their own minds, that they're civilian soldiers, and that there's some kind of greater, cause that they're a part of that seems to revolve around being white and male and protecting like what that means to be white and American. And it's again, I think I don't like being an alarmist person, and I don't think it's very useful, but I do think like Democratic lawmakers need to like wake up. Like it can't just like, this is not like, it's truly not sustainable. Like, I don't think people understand, like, it's not, you have the guy showing up at Nancy Pelosi's house with a hammer, like that. There's obviously a trend that's happening here now, sort of concluding or not concluding, but escalating to what happened in Minnesota a few weeks ago. I just don't think people fully have reckoned with the fact that you have these highly activated individuals who see themselves as, militant saviors and believe that they have the right to do this work, that they have the right to engage in extrajudicial violence and act as vigilantes. And I think that's what, I mean, I don't know what's in Pete Hegseth's mind, but yes, based on the actions that he's taken, right? I mean, that seems like it would be a natural affinity for him to want to, build a bridge to that crowd.
So there's no one else that you fantasized about hurting?
Oh, like people like Nancy Pelosi and,
Okay.
But I never had any plans to do anything. It's like when Obama was in office, I always thought I hated him, in certain respects. Like, I like how black people have all the rights afforded to them now and stuff. That's great, But now we're going to La La Land now where, the left is just forcing their weird things on everybody, like transgenderism and, I believe in the Bible and stuff, and I don't like that stuff. I mean, they should be able to live the way that they want, but just don't force that on me, I just don't like it. The world's kind of backwards nowadays, it seems like.
My exit question to you, Michael, because it is, we say scaring is caring around here. So it is frightening, but I think we have to address it. We have to face it. You mentioned fascism, and, fascism is often a mix of militancy, racism, and religion.
Right.
What is the connection of right-wing, this version of right-wing Christianity, and this NRA push and this gun lobby push?
I mean, I think the trifecta, I may forget one of them, but you see the shirts and you hear the motto all the time. It's God, guns, family. I think those are those are the 3 points of the trident. So, I think that all goes hand in hand. There's this notion, it's all of the most toxic elements are sort of come together in this stew, which is that there's this belief, one, that the right to be a warrior is almost divine and required, and to uphold these values that apparently or supposedly come from the Bible or are handed down by a higher power that's mixed in with this notion of traditional conservative values that suppose, that in a mythical way, like held the bonds of society together. The 1950s idea of America, where everything was like really great, wonderful, and that there's been an attempt since then, or repeated attempts since then, to destroy that notion of America, because it's a plot apparently, by communists who want to destroy the fabric of the country, and that the way that you protect what you have and protect your family and protect society is with a firearm.
Did the group know that you had a lot of firearms and ammo?
Yeah.
And pipe bombs?
Well, they probably didn't know about the pipe bombs. But most of the guys, have a supply of weapons and ammunition.
Okay.
So it's just like all these, there's a question of like what makes people susceptible to this myth.
Something that might not be talked about on other media platforms.
Yeah, it's just, it's kind of like a family community. So if there's a danger, then you warn the rest of the group, whatever. So,
Where do y'all get your information that you would warn everyone to?
like last night we were talking about the different vaccines that are available for COVID. And, like I read some stuff about how Russia is deploying their vaccine to the whole population now. And a lot of the other members of the group didn't know that. So
To the Russian population? Or?
yeah, it's been voluntary, but now they're going to make it like mandatory
Gotcha.
for the whole. It's going to be it's going to be available for the whole population. So
Available.
yeah,
How'd you find that out?
it's on. I follow RT News. My wife is, like I said, is Ukrainian, so I'm kind of interested with what's going on over there.
Yeah.
I have been since 2014.
Does she still have family over there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She's actually from Crimea, so
Okay.
they got annexed by Russia.
Okay.
So
How are they doing over there?
they're fine. It's just they're but at least they're open over there. There's no lockdowns and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a matter of sociological study and speculation. And there's this idea, that as the economy has changed so much since the 90s, and the factory jobs that were once plentiful and are no longer, one of the groups that has been left behind but has also been told how great they are forever is white men. So there's a need to have some kind of there's a void, an identity void, and this particular narrative fills that void. This idea that you can be a citizen protector, and that you're doing like some kind of work for a higher power and a higher cause. That's is it largely or entirely cosplay? Is it like a fantasy? Yes, but that's what makes it so scary, because that's not. I mean, they've totally absorbed this fantasy and are now in the process of acting it out.
You said the zone that y'all were in. What does that mean?
The states split up into so many zones.
Okay.
There's like zone 1, 2, 3, 4,
Okay.
5.
What zone is your group in?
I'm zone 4.
Zone 4. And is that like all of California, or?
No, it's like if you just go online, you can look up 3%. I mean, on Wikipedia, it'll tell you. You know about all this stuff, obviously.
Yeah, I've looked some of it up, but I haven't found out the zones yet. So,
It's just the states broken up in kind of like real estate sections,
okay.
right? From certain point A to point B, and then that's that zone.
Okay. So is zone 4 California and neighboring states?
No,
or
it's like I
parts
said,
of
the state
California?
is split up into
Okay.
sections.
Yeah.
So it just depends where you live.
Yeah.
It's scary stuff, but I'm glad that you are on top of it, because we do need to have this kind of journalism and reporting so that we can face it. Michael Spies, your reporting is available in The Trace, thanks to Rolling Stone, and we will post it. We're going to make sure that we put a link up to your piece so that people can read it, and we got to face it. Thank you very much, Michael. Much appreciate your time. The article is entitled "White, Legally Armed and Primed for Political Violence." It's available right now on thetrace.org. You will find the link to the article right here below, or on the Joyce House Substack at joyannereid.com. Now be sure to give it a read, and also hit the like button below so that we know that you enjoyed this content and can provide you more of it. And please do subscribe to this channel as well. More than 7 in 10 people who watch this YouTube channel are not subscribers. So let's improve that number right now. So subscribe to The Joy Reid Show, and also share this channel. The Joy Reid Show, which also can be found at thejoyreidshow.com. And consider becoming a TJRS member or a Readers member so that you can participate in exclusive members-only group chats and get other cool benefits. We appreciate you joining us, and we will see you on the next The Joy Reid Show.
Getting back to the basics, grassroots level. Let me dig a little deeper with the shovel. Plenty can't tell the forest from the trees that I'm hard to detect. Like
I got
a black
nothing.
hole
I got
in
nothing.
time. Injustice anywhere, it's a threat to justice everywhere. Let me make this clear, I got a bone to pick.